Welcome to the Scottsdale Development Review Board public meeting. The purpose of the Development Review Board is to maintain the quality of development in Scottsdale by reviewing all of the design aspects of a proposed development and the relationship of its design components to the surrounding environment and community. The board also reviews all preliminary plats for subdivisions to assure conformance to policies and ordinance requirements. The agenda consists of roll call, public comment on non-agendized items, administrative report, minutes approval of the prior meeting, and action items. A roll call vote will be taken after each item's motion. The liaison will call each board member's name to indicate their desired vote for that item. After the vote has been counted, the liaison may read out the final vote. Citizens wishing to speak during public comment time or to speak specifically on any agenda item may fill out a blue request to speak card to the staff table before the agenda item or items is to be discussed. Citizens interested in submitting a written comment on any item may submit a yellow written comments card to the person at the staff table prior to the beginning of public testimony. When called, please come to the podium, state your name and address, and then begin speaking. Groups wishing to speak should elect a spokesperson to represent the views of the group. To facilitate the meeting, your comment will be limited to 3 minutes for individual speakers with 1 additional minute for each additional individual present at the meeting who has contributed their time to a representative speaker, up to a total of 10 minutes. I remind our audience that the board's review relates to design matters and does not include consideration of existing zoning district designations, zoning entitlements, or the allowed uses within the zoning districts. The board's motion may be to approve, to approved with modified stipulations, to deny the request, or to continue the case. Thank you for your interest and time. We will now begin the meeting with the roll call.
Vice Chair Brand.
Here.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Present.
Board Member Pieser.
Here.
Board Member Fakih. Board Member Mason.
Here.
Board Member Robinson.
Here.
5 present. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we can move on to public comment on non-agendized items. I do not see that we have any yellow cards filled out for non-agendized items. So with that, we can move on to the administrative report for Mr. Carr.
Thank you, Vice Chair Brand, and good afternoon. Just for the record, I want to note that Mr. Graham, Councilmember Graham, is also absent today. For next week, I just want to note that we will have 2 items for next week's agenda. This is, again, one of those months in the summertime where we have back-to-back meetings, so we'll be meeting next week on the 17th. For today, there is 3 public speaker items for number 6 on the agenda, so you should have those on the dais there. Other than that, I think that concludes my administrative report for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Let's move on to the approval of the minutes from the prior meeting. Do we have a motion for that?
Yeah, motion to approve the regular minutes of the meeting of June 12, 2025. Development Board meeting as presented.
Second.
Vice Chair Brand.
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
I'm going to decline to vote on this because I was not present at the time.
Board Member Pieser.
Yes.
Board Member Mason.
Yes.
Board Member Robinson.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, we can move on to action items. Again, do we have any blue request to speak cards for persons within that? Okay. So we have no written comment cards. With that, we can move forward with, I believe that there's been, from someone on the dais, a motion to remove item number 3 from the consent agenda item for a full presentation. So, do we have a motion to approve cases 4 and 5 on the consent agenda prior to moving to the regular agenda?
Motion to approve cases 25 DR 2021, number 2, and 34 DR 2024.
We're moving 25 DR 2021, number 2, to the regular agenda, Mr. Pieser. So do we have,
Said
the
item number
motion would be
5?
for items 4 and 5?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said number 5. Okay, motion to approve 34 DR 2024, 38 DR 2024. Per staff recommended stipulations as after finding the development applications meet the applicable Development Review Board criteria and the additional findings in the development of the Old Town area.
Second.
Vice Chair Brand,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes.
Board Member Pieser,
Yes.
Board Member Mason,
Yes. Yes.
Board Member Robinson.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, without moving on to the regular agenda, we're going to go ahead and see the item number 3, the Goldwater project as the first item on the regular agenda, 25-DR-2021. Do we have a staff presentation by Ms. Tessier?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Vice Chair Brand and members of the board. Mayor Tessier here with the Planning Department. Can you hear me okay? I feel like the volume's a little off. Okay, great. The case before you today is 25 DR 2021, number 2, the Goldwater reapproval. Just a side note, this is just on the agenda today because this was previously approved by the Development Review Board. However, they did not pull permits within the Development Review Board time period. As such, they're coming back for just reapproval. So nothing has changed since that Development Review Board approval, and it's just a recap of what was approved from the original DRB approval. So just wanted to put that clarification out there today. So the subject site is located at the southeast corner of North 70th Street and North Goldwater Boulevard, as highlighted in yellow. And as you can see, there's some multifamily to the west. A vacant commercial mixed-use development known as Museum Square will be to the north. There's some commercial to the east. We have a hotel to the southeast portion of the site, and some multifamily to the southwest portion of that site. So again, today, these applicants requesting Development Review Board reapproval for a mixed-use development comprised of 40 dwelling units and 7,000 square feet of commercial area. You'll see that vehicular access is provided along East 4th Street, which leads down to a parking garage. We have pedestrian circulation that's enhanced along the perimeter of the site. The applicant is also stipulated to provide a public access easement to allow pedestrians cross from East 4th Street to Goldwater Boulevard. Additionally, as part of their zoning case and will be required at time of permit issuance, they're going to be required to contribute 50% of an enhanced pedestrian walkway crossing to then give pedestrians access across Goldwater to lead into what is known Museum Square. So before you is the applicant's landscape plan, where you can see mature trees along the perimeter of the site. I believe it's a combination of salvage materials as well as new materials. And again, as part of the zoning case back in 2019, they were stipulated to provide some enhanced landscaping along that south half of East 4th Street. And that's just part of the communication that they had with the neighbors to the south. So they're going to be memorializing that with their final plans. Before you are the proposed Development Review Board building elevations. As you can see, they're going to be consistent with the Old Town Design Guidelines, sensitive design principles, as well as the commercial design guidelines. I'll conclude my presentation with this perspective. The applicant team is here and has prepared a full presentation, so she can go into a little bit more details on anything that I have may missed, and then of course happy to ask any questions you may have subsequent to their presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Ms. Tessier from the board? No questions. Is there an interest from the board to see the applicant presentation? Yeah, okay. Can we get the applicant for a presentation? Thank you.
Hello, my name is Karin Santiago. I'm the architect. Members of the board, we used this presentation before in the last go-around, so we're kind of showing it to you again. This is the Goldwater, a view from Goldwater Boulevard right here, and you're seeing the contribution to the arts program, the cultural improvement program that happens along that pedestrian corridor that Ms. Tessier mentioned. So this is a new crosswalk that will allow pedestrian connection between the south and what's the arts district right now. Can I advance this myself? So this is just a more comprehensive sense of how the Old Town and how this development actually loops into all the districts and the different areas. We really think one of the best parts of this project will be the enhancements to the pedestrian and walkability for this entire zone by actually creating a meaningful connector from south of Goldwater, which is a high-traffic corridor, as you know, into the Arts District, where you see the blue and everything else to the north of that. This is what the site looks like right now. You're probably very familiar. And so we really think that enhancing and infilling the site is a meaningful contribution to this area, and it will help residents in the community in general create a safer and better environment. There is additional landscape, some shade, and of course the residences that are provided here. These are just some before and afters, just to give you a sense of the changes that we're expecting to see. The project does transition from the east into the west in height. So the lower portion that you're seeing is commercial, and the taller portion at the end on the west is the residences. A lot of effort was placed into shading, especially for the commercial areas and areas that can be for public enjoyment. Also widening of all of the sidewalks that surround this development. These are patios that happen along the Goldwater commercial area. Just a closer view of that corridor with the cultural improvement program art piece. And the view at the corner of 70th and 4th Street. The artwork has been intentionally placed where it's most able to contribute to that pedestrian corridor, and it has been approved already by the Cultural Improvements Program Board. These are just some aerial cuts showing you the distribution of the different components of the project. So the commercial space is shown in red, and it is distributed evenly along Goldwater with the purpose of establishing more activity along that corridor and creating a more vibrant environment, especially at night. The purple is the parking for the project. And so the residences are here. Now you can see certain amenities are also included with the project. And the uppermost level, the 5th level, is actually stepped back significantly to have mass reduction and visually create a lighter area on the west. Along with all of this, we also had a lot of talks and included very many features that are aimed at reducing the carbon footprint of our project, creating more shade, creating a better environment for people to walk along, and also the project itself, which will include high-efficiency HVAC and a high-efficiency envelope. A lot of these features, this would be the first project to actually include them for something of this type. And also solar panels and on-site generation of power for the house loads is proposed. Just some sections kind of showing you that every resident is expected to have pretty meaningful outdoor space and balconies that occur along every surface of the residential portion of the project. And like Ms. Tessier mentioned, we are, of course, respecting the guidelines and using that and trying to be conversant with the context in a way that we think will greatly enhance this area. These are some of the materials and the colors that are being used. This just kind of gives you a sense of the sustainability features, but in section, looking at a cut through the project. The project does include an atrium in the center, so in addition to people having their own balconies, the units themselves do internally look at an atrium space that has some features to include daylight in there. Back when this was rezoned, a lot of attention was placed into how its zoning is able to comply with different requirements like balconies and overhangs. And so these are really just a lot of the effort that we went through with staff to get everything approved inside the guideline that had been already established. So you can see the envelope and how we are actually able to make that work. And finally, just to look at our landscape plan and how shade is prioritized by this landscape plan and the shade plan. Thank you.
Do we have any questions from the board? Yeah, sure.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the architecture that was necessary to do this project. I remember this project now, and it's a demanding site at best, and so we really appreciate it. It looks like a very nice project. I forget, the material for the overhangs in front of the retail buildings, what is that material?
So there is a steel structure that is being proposed, and it's all metal generally for durability. So it's lightweight metal and steel structure.
Okay, very good. And then what's the color palette on that overhang? Is it going to be a neutral or?
The actual shade structures are actually the lighter color. The intention there is to reflect as much of the heat as we can. With those, the supports are actually in the darker color of our palette to kind of make them go away.
Very good. What size box trees are those in front of the retail? Do you know?
You know, it's been a while since we've had to look at our plan. But we did go back and forth, and those were approved. I believe they're 24 or 36-inch boxes for most of the ones that are required along that frontage. But I would have to honestly confirm that. It's hard to know off the top of my head. We did go back and forth quite a bit with the city on that. So.
Very good. Thank you. And then I guess probably what is the as far as because of the facing of part of the residential area, it's facing a kind of like a north, kind of like a northeast exposure. Is that what? Would you say
along Goldwater? Yes. Yes.
What are you doing as far as that for on the glazing? Are you doing anything particular?
Yeah, so the residences themselves, we used a pretty deep balcony is kind of the major way by which we are mitigating solar exposure and heat gain to the actual units. Those units each have most of their glass oriented so that it is towards the balcony, and the balcony itself is actually pretty deep into the unit in most cases. So as you go around, you'll see that the depth of the balcony is actually varied, so that where there is a worse exposure, there's a deeper recess for those outdoor spaces. And they're most times actually carved out. Therefore, glass is able to orient itself like that. There are a small number of openings and windows in other places, but for the most part, that's how we're mitigating the heat.
So what do you think, anticipate as far as the upper level balcony size would be usually?
So because by upper level, I'm assuming you mean like the penthouse uppermost,
uh-huh.
yes. So the units are 11 on each level, but we have only 7 on the uppermost level. And so that was done by design so that we could actually enhance further those units and create even better outdoor spaces for some of those. And that also helped us mitigate the size of the mass at the very top where it was necessary. So I don't know if that answers the question.
How, and then, because I didn't see it, where's the mechanical for the retail?
So the garage will have some level of the mechanical. It is a VRF system that we're utilizing throughout, so condensing units are expected to live in the garage, and later when tenant improvements actually come along, they'll have to obviously put some level of equipment inside the actual commercial space itself, so that it's all screened within the garage.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Do we have any other comments from the board? Great. I'll make one kind of closing comment. I'm probably the only board member that was on the board when this case came through back in 2022, I believe.
Yes.
I think that if I recall this case correctly, I think a lot of our time was spent on the shading of the public way along the Goldwater frontage on the north.
Yes.
Which I think is consistent with the application that was resubmitted per the back and forth that we had. And I'll just take a further note to appreciate the design work that I know that you have put in, as well as the ownership. I think it's a really nice addition to the downtown fabric, and the reflection of the mid-century components of the building is really artfully done, and personally appreciate the attention to the pedestrian zones that your firm has put in, and the detail that you've put in to the shade structures, as well as the details at the ground level. So with that, I'm going to turn it over for a roll call vote. Is there a proposal for, does anyone want to make it a approval move?
Move to approve case 25 DR 2021, number 2.
I'll second that.
Vice Chair Brand,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes.
Board Member Pieser,
Yes.
Board Member Mason,
Yes.
Board Member Robinson.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Board.
Okay, we'll move on to regular agenda item number 6. Do we have a staff presentation for that?
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Brand, Commissioner Gonzalez, members of the DRB. I'm Jeff Barnes with the city's planning department, presenting 12 PP 1995 number 2, which is the Lot 34 Desert Summit building envelope modification. So the request before you is a request by the owner to modify the previously approved building envelope for Lot 34 within Desert Summit as established through 12 PP 1995. This came before you back on May 15th and was continued, providing direction to the applicant and some discussion to look at an alternative building envelope location from the one that was proposed at that point in time and come back to the board. And so we are back in front of you today. Just as a refresher on site location, Lot 34, the subject site is highlighted in yellow on the screen here within the northern portion of the Desert Summit subdivision. It carries the R170 ESL zoning, as do the other lots in this portion of the subdivision itself has multiple areas with different zoning designations to it. It is a little bit of a large L-shaped subdivision, so I wanted to give a context graphic here just so that you can take it all in, extending over to 118th Street on the east there, Joe Max to the south, and you can see contextually Lot 34 is up there in that northern portion of the development. So the purpose of this request, the applicant is seeking to modify the location of the conceptual building envelope for Lot 34 that was originally established through the zoning and preliminary plat approval actions at a location closer to the street at the front of the lot, the northern end of the lot, to now a location around the middle of the lot at a higher elevation, but not the highest elevation as previously proposed. So some key items here just to cover. In the review of the revision, staff finds that the updated proposal is more consistent with the stipulations of the zoning and preliminary plat cases, the purpose of ESL and open space location guidelines. The updated proposal is more in conformance with the Development Review Board criteria. We do still have community input received in opposition. Quickly covering some of the history on this, so that initial zoning action took place in 1993. Then in 1995, there was an amendment to that zoning case to modify some of the stipulations, which specifically included increasing the available building envelope areas and decreasing the dimensional parameter between building envelopes that would be NAOS. The preliminary plat came through for approval in 1995, established with it a plan that carried those zoning level building envelope concept locations forward into a more defined plan showing the lot configurations. And that's the document essentially being requested to be amended through this application. So some of the key stipulations out of those zoning cases, I mentioned they were changed, but specifically the distance between building envelopes was reduced from prior dimension of 75 feet down to 60 feet. The individual envelope location or sizes for properties within these zoning districts was increased to 20,000 square feet. Quickly running back through some of those exhibits for you just to kind of refresh your memory on this and bring you up to the current proposal. This is that original zoning exhibit with Lot 34 highlighted with the yellow dot up there at the north end. The second zoning case modifying the stipulations included a slightly revised, or at least slightly more detailed version of that exhibit. Still Lot 34 highlighted with the yellow dot up there at the north end. When we get to the preliminary plat case, the lot lines are introduced to that exhibit, and Lot 34, this is now oriented with north to the right-hand side of the screen there, but Lot 34 is now shown with the context of its boundaries. And this is just the lower part of that subdivision. So the last time around, we showed you the applicant provided this exhibit combining the topography of the site, the boundaries of the site, and up at the north end, the top of the graphic, the boulder line there representing the building envelope carried over from the preliminary plat exhibit. At the previous meeting, the request that you saw was to move the building envelope to the south end of the site, which is the highest elevation end of the site. That was given direction in the continuance to look for a different location. The applicant has come back with a more central building envelope location at the more the middle of the site, which was part of the discussion dialogue at the last meeting, leaving that high end, that south end of the site for preservation as natural area open space in alignment with the ESL parameters, more of the intent of the zoning and preliminary plat stipulations, and more aligned with other modifications that have occurred out in the development. Shown on this just conceptually is a general building footprint of a house that could be built there. I'm calling attention to that because this is not the house design, and it's not meant to memorialize the house design as design and configuration of individual single-family homes is outside of the board's purview. But it's just there to attempt to show a little bit better where the house may be located within that for context in this graphic. The last time we had shown this exhibit with the hillside landform, highlighting that central area in this cluster of lots is hillside landform, has a couple of hills in it, and those building envelopes really look like they were intending to push out away from that and protect that and preserve that area. You can see there are some encroachments in there. Lot 34 is highlighted here. The previous proposal was fully within that hillside landform. The updated proposal splits about midway between some in the hillside landform, some in the upper desert landform, a little more in alignment with some of the other encroachments out there. We also showed you this last time, which was the topography of the area that highlights a little more visually those slopes up to the various peaks of this set of hill features in the middle of the development there. Notably, in the move from the upper area to the middle of the lot, the contour lines that development will sit between are much more in alignment now with the adjacent properties on either side, placing this new envelope more consistent with where the development has occurred for lots 33 and 35 surrounding it. Not reading through all of this for you, but just putting it up as a reminder, the applicable DRB criteria that fall in this situation are conformance with the general plan, the applicable design standards, development standards, zoning actions, et cetera, that development align with the purpose, the function of the ESL overlay, and respond to open spaces, topography, and the like in its placement. Working through the analysis of the updated proposal, most of these elements stay the same. The purpose still appears that those zoning stipulations, preliminary plat stipulations, were creating building envelopes to control where building was happening and preserve significant areas of the lots and natural area open space. But this new proposal, based on staff's analysis, does provide an updated position that leaves more of the significant portion of the upper part of the lot preservable as open space. It moves, as I mentioned, the development area away from being fully within the highest part of that hillside landform down to a more middle area that splits the two landforms and aligns more closely with the other development surrounding. There was noted before potential impacts from the length of the driveway to get up to the higher portion of the lot. That still exists because this is not down at the street, but to a lesser extent, presuming those impacts at the middle of the lot versus the upper level. not boring you too much with these, but just putting them up as a reminder, this is the environmentally sensitive lands purpose statement elements that we showed the last time that relate to placement of development and preservation of open space. Part of the conversation the last time involved some questions of the stormwater runoff in the area and potential impacts at the front of the lot. Our stormwater staff did go out and visit the site after the continuance, make some observations and look in our records and try to gather some findings based on the information available. This summary of findings was issued by Vivian Mew and our stormwater group and included in the staff report for you. But generally, the staff findings noted that there is an area at the front of this lot, excuse me. It is not part of a city-managed drainage system as we attempted to discuss the last time, in that it's not a designed retention basin for the neighborhood. It's not covered with a drainage easement. It is impacted by improvements downstream that appear to have contributed to the ponding of water in that location at the lowest elevations of the lot. And that does appear to prompt some impact to development of that area, although as this is still a preliminary level, the level of detail that would determine those very specific elements doesn't typically come until the permit application review. So they weren't able to get too much more in-depth based on that. But we do have our stormwater staff present in the building today for you, should you have additional focused questions for them. I'm here to answer additional questions, but I know the applicant team has a presentation and is prepared to give that to you as well.
Thank you, Mr. Barnes. Do we have any questions for staff or Mr. Barnes from the board prior to hearing the applicant's presentation? Okay, so none here. I just wanted to get some clarity. This is a different type of case than we're normally used to hearing. In fact, in over 4 years, this is the first building envelope case that we've heard on this board. Can we outline the purview based on maybe Mr. Carr or our acting attorney, what the purview and what we should be deliberating on and the criteria? I think there was a lot of talk about natural state and unbuildable, and there's a lot of things that were thrown out in this last case, but it would help for us to understand what we should be thinking about on this prior to engaging in, prior to seeing the applicant's presentation as well as comments.
Vice Chair Brand, I can attempt to answer that for you. And I'm going to back up here to this exhibit in doing so. So the preliminary plat case from 1995 that came through and was approved by the Development Review Board set with its stipulations and this exhibit showing the building envelope location. So the scope or purpose that we're coming to you with here is essentially a modification to this exhibit, looking at just the building envelopes that were conceptually laid out here and the proposed movement of that envelope in that same context of the DRB's
Sorry,
criteria.
let me be more specific.
Sure.
There's a difference between just looking at the shift of the building envelope in reference to ESL standards, city-approved guidelines, and conformance to guidelines in prior cases. But you have also presented information from the Stormwater Department and from other things that is information about the existing condition of the property. And really specifically asking, how is that information and the input from stormwater and our staff supposed to be, how is it included? How is it supposed to inform our decision on this? I'm trying to understand the relevant, how we should be thinking about it.
Sure, Vice Chair Brand, members of the board. There are a number of different considerations when we're looking at the location of a building envelope. There's the environmental concerns with regard to topography, the vegetation on the site, and certainly how water flows on and off the site is another one of those considerations, and a reason why we mentioned it. And so I think when you are looking at this, your review should take into account all those considerations in analyzing whether or not the proposed location of the building envelope is the best spot, so to speak, for this site. And and also one of those considerations would be buildability. I mean, the applicant has presented some, I guess, some reasons to why some parts are more buildable than others on the site. And I think all those factors are part of your consideration, your deliberations when you go to review this application. It's not strictly limited to one of those items, and that's why Mr. Barnes has attempted to outline a lot of those different components that factor into that discussion.
Okay, I appreciate that clarity. Thank you. Is there an applicant presentation?
Enter button, that's it. And that'll page me up and down. This and this?
I think it's the right and left here.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. Good afternoon. I'm Johnny Angeloni. It's my wife, Stacia, my architect, Andy Gramling. We're the owners, Stacia and I are the owners of Lot 34, okay? We're back for the second time on this in round 2, and we appreciate your time today. Let me make sure I get this right. No, I don't need a Vanna. I like it. As we discussed before, these building envelopes were all created to preserve the NOS in that development. The building envelope that's being referenced, as Jeff had said, was only on the preliminary plat. They never formalized the plat on everything for this development because we've been asking for that building envelope and that documentation. We're requesting to move the building envelope due to issues outside of our control and presented by the property. Our initial proposal was to relocate, and as Jeff put, to the top of that lot, and the board had pushback. Mr. Brand asked for some studies based off of stormwater on that at the time and some of the other things on that, so we went back and started to do more due diligence. In doing so, there are really only 2 potential building envelopes on this property. All the required NAOS and all the ESOL overlays are going to be met as well. As Jeff had just pulled up, Barnes had just pulled up, that was the original plot on the NAOS plan illustrating the building envelope. Okay? There are some additional factors in this case that I want you guys to consider, please. As you saw before, our lot's a bow tie lot. It makes it very difficult to build in the middle of that lot. Okay? The lower level has turned into a ponding and stormwater retention area that we're going to go through some detail on to show where culverts and redirection of water was put into. It's now 6 to 8 feet below the street level coming off of Lot 33 and 112th Street. And Lot 35 has built completely outside of their building envelope into Hillside and now abuts to 34, making some of our placement and setbacks difficult as well, amongst other things we're going to discuss. I wanted to put some visual facts in play here. This is the lower ending of the lot where I met with stormwater. As you can see, these culverts were put into the city, and there was a homemade retention wall. This was all done by the previous owner of Lot 33, and it's been there for years. So obviously there have been issues down in the bottom of the lot. It redirects the water off of his hilltop that's coming over there into my lot on 34 down to the bottom of that. This is the lower level and some of the resulting of that. You can see that our lot is 6 to 8 feet, maybe more, below the street level and my neighbor's driveway. And it's loamy soil. It compresses down when you walk on it. We did get a hold of city stormwater after the request of the last meeting. They did meet us out there on property, and as you saw in Jeff's presentation as well, these are some of her notes. This may affect the feasibility of placing a structure within that area without significant mitigation. We noted that ponding at the altered drainage site, because none of that was ever permitted. In fact, when they got out there, they didn't even realize it was there. At the altered drainage conditions at the front of the lot may present challenges if development remains within the current development envelope. Vivian Mew. So in summing that area up, to give you a little bit of an optic on that, this is how it lays out in the earlier picture like Jeff showed you. 80% of that area is the retention from the flooding in the ponding area. There's no drainage out the other side of those culverts. And if we did build down there, where's the stormwater going to go? We're going to block it all off. It's going to flow into 33, and it's going to flow across the street into the lots across the street. Now let's bring into lot 35. This home was completely built outside their building envelope into hillside. It now abuts to two sides of my property, right up against the walls. Their very large retention walls on the back side of that are now gathering water off the top of my hill and pushing it down to the bottom of my property as well. And in doing this, they created absolutely no privacy for either of us. And the crazy thing is, we've been going in and asking, there are absolutely no city documents justifying the building envelope move. It just happened. Now, you're going to hear from the Clarks today, and regardless of what they have to say, based off of everything here, and really what the message is, hey, it was okay for us to do all this and get what we want, where we want, but not for you. And then they're going to tell you why. They're probably going to present a drainage report, too, that they had done from Summit Civil Engineering that actually solidifies the 100-year flood on the bottom of the base of the property. But it also conveniently shows, remember, they paid for it, where our home or where they think our home should be. In my opinion, that's a bit hypocritical, but especially in light of the impact that I'm balancing with on 35 and my lot positioning. And by the way, I contracted with the same civil engineer before I went and bought that property and had them do diligence on the lot because I knew that bottom section was a problem. Summit Civil Engineering, Frank Boxberger, I'm sure you guys have all seen him. And his position on the lot was we should build at the top at the summit. And here's his document showing that, which is why we presented that in the first go-around. So I want to recap. I want to recap where we started so everybody understands, and I want to tell you what, in working with Jeff Barnes, and where we're ending up and why we picked there. Our initial was to utilize the saddle up there. It had the least distribution or disturbance on the lot. It protects significant vegetation. It didn't have a lot of excavation because it was a summit up there. It could have been easily graded flat. It exceeded the NAOS requirements, meets the building envelope size. It also protected and preserved a lot of the ESOL. And it wasn't a protected hilltop in all of the city programs. This was the initial proposed building envelope site, as Jeff showed you. Again, compliant with all of those, met the 93 and 95, but again, back to our review, the board, the BDR board, and the staff felt it was a big variance on the original NAOS plat and envelope. So we had a continuance, and that what we decided to do was we met with Jeff on the property. And Jeff was outstanding, and I really appreciate him coming out there in the heat. We walked that property for about an hour and a half, looking at where everything was, and started talking about this area versus this area versus this area. And in doing so, that's where we came back and proposed the lower midsection. It is a little steeper, it is a little more narrow section of the lot. It's going to require a little more excavation. Probably larger retaining walls may be needed. We can work with it with the right home in that area And as you see, it does penetrate into the old existing building envelope, okay? And we're probably going to build a 2-story house in there now because of a narrower lot and a narrower position to be able to create more outdoor living space. This is what we came up with what you saw before from Jeff. We come in, we come through the lower, older building envelopes section, just outside the ponding area. The stormwater still has some natural flow. We should be able to put a 20,000 square foot building envelope in there. We're answering a lot of the neighbors' concerns, like some of the neighbors that were on the backside down here, like Danny over here and some of the other neighbors in Cohen's. They're not going to see our roof lines now that they were worried about. We still have the concerns of 33 and 35 for where it is. We'll create excess NAOS. We'll meet the setbacks and the developments. And more importantly, it's going to allow us to take advantage of some of the beautiful views too, like the other 12 neighbors in our community that are completely outside of their building envelopes, and be able to enjoy that. So what was the original intent in 1995? To protect and preserve as much natural desert as possible with the least disturbance. Both of those options did that, but we're presenting that second alternative option. So where do we proceed from here? Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have questions from the, specifically from the board prior? We have one request to speak. Brad, do we normally do questions, or do we do public speaking prior to questions?
You could do both, Vice Chair. If there are no questions now, you can take the public comment, but the applicant is usually granted the ability to respond to public comment after that public comment as well.
Okay, why don't we go ahead and, if it's okay with the board, we'll go ahead and take, there is one public comment. Go hear public comment, and then the board
Sure.
can give you comments to respond to. So I think we have David Clark as a request to speak.
So I actually didn't plan to speak, but I just want to address some comments that were made. I put a comment card in. There's some concerns I have, and that's really where it comes down to. Oh, sorry, David Clark, and I'm in lot 35. So the concerns I have are, I don't feel like I'm getting the whole story. And the loops that are drawn on that don't exactly match up. We weren't outside of our envelope. Yes, we did shift. We still were touching it. What I had seen before wasn't touching the envelope before. And what that report says, and what that guy told us, the engineer Frank Baccioni that he's talking about, that he's saying in the report that we got from him that we requested that was already done was the same report. If we want him to be here, then we have to request him to be here. That's fine. But the bottom line is, the envelope doesn't necessarily bother me as much. I feel like it should be a little bit lower, but whatever. It's going to be up to you guys' purview, and I'll be happy with whatever's decided. I don't want to start a neighborhood argument. But I'm not getting all the information. I get a 26-foot high story, like high building. I get a 20-foot. I get a different variation. I get a 3-story is what he told me on site. And if we approve the envelope as is, and it keeps saying should, our envelope should be in 20,000 feet. Our envelope should be this. Our height should be this. Okay, that's great. How does that guarantee to me that now that we've moved it up the hill, it's not actually going to be higher and blocking the views that everybody's saying? There is no guarantee to that. So this envelope move does impact future moves. And the 100-year flood area, if you look at the report that we submitted, it's a PDF that you guys should have got as well, that we submitted over a week ago, and we found that it wasn't put in the report. And I actually emailed today to find out why it wasn't in there, and the pictures that I took were, and the report wasn't. It will show there is a flood area down there. Not 6 to 8 feet low, that's the big problem. Not the same big area that encompasses that whole area with the blue like they like to show you with the water area. But there is an area. And so, yes, I do agree that that should be moved and they should be out of that little area. Or they could do some construction to mitigate that, which would be less than building into a hill. That's my opinion. But my opinion doesn't really matter. What matters is if we move that envelope, what is the height of that building going to be? What is that going to intrude on everybody else? And knowing that everybody else bought and invested in their land, and the fact that he says that Lot 35 was never approved, I have a stamped set from the city of Scottsdale. Our lot was approved. It was approved. So I have a stamp set. I have approval from the city. They don't just stamp it when you're done with the building. They do inspections while you're going along, when grading happens and when all those things happen. And if there was at any point, and I'm not the builder, I didn't build my property, I didn't design it, I didn't lay it out, but when they designed it and they built it out, they went through the process. They got the approvals. It was done. It could have been stopped at any point in the submittal process to the planning department. It wasn't. So our property was approved. I differ in the fact that he's going to say that Lot 35 was never approved or never submitted properly or whatever. That's not the case. So bottom line is, if I was to get more information, maybe this would be acceptable.
Thank you for your comments. Do we have questions from the board? Go ahead, Mr. Gonzalez.
First of all, not for the owner, but for staff, do you know what the height differential is between the floor on the proposed area and on the first application, what the height differential might be as far as the foundation floor?
Vice Chair Brand, Commissioner Gonzalez, we don't have that information. The reason being is that would come in at the more technical review of the final plans. I can generally say that the development standards of the property, the building height is going to be measured from the natural grade of the lot. That's going to be applicable regardless of where the building sits.
And just one more time, what is that maximum height there?
I don't have the amended standards sitting in front of me, but typically that would be 30 feet allowed by that zoning district, and the ESL overlay adds the natural grade measurement point for that.
Very good. I guess the other question I have then is I guess the change in the building envelope is because of the drainage per se?
Yes.
Is that my correct interpretation of that from staff's level?
Commissioner Gonzalez, that was one of the parameters that was the rationale in the application, yes.
Did you add any stipulations into this?
The stipulations that are provided for you do not get into the drainage details.
Yes, sir.
They respect the prior stipulations of the zoning case with the amendment of the exhibit for this lot specifically.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
I'll go ahead and ask a question because it's kind of an oversight question here. And I will say respectfully, Mr. Angeloni, as the applicant, this is why I asked the first question, is because the majority of your presentation really focuses on a hardship that's the existing condition of the site. And you even said that prior to purchase that you had an engineer out on site to explain to you exactly what the hardship was. And I'm trying to understand from our staff if this board is supposed to be deliberating on a hardship, or are we supposed to be there was very, and in context too, Mr. Angeloni, there was very, your presentation is about the existing condition of the site and the hardship and averting a hardship in order to get your house built. The presentation was not about, I've got a better building envelope that we feel like meets the design guidelines and the ESL desert districts better than the existing envelope. So this is exactly why I really want to understand how are we supposed to respond to hardship?
Vice Chair Brand and Commissioner Gonzalez and members of the Development Review Board. I'm going to read a few things from your enabling legislation that I think might help you hone in on the factors and criteria that you're really needing to look for. In the purpose of the DRB, it relates to looking at applications and relating it to land values, aesthetics, good site planning, economic and environmental well-being, and applications that intend to enrich the lives of all citizens by promoting harmonious, safe, attractive, and compatible development, as well as, and later on in the ordinance that governs the DRB, looking at development that promotes desirable relationships of structures to one another, to open space, to topography, and recognizing unique climatic and environmental factors. So if you think of all of those things, those are the criteria you're really looking at to gauge whether to grant this or not. Hardship really is not in there. And does that answer your question?
Can you summarize that? So what I'm, just in my brain's working right, is recognizing and seeing the existing condition on the site can affect our ability to assess what's the proper building envelope, but the proper building envelope should not be on a basis of a hardship decision. It should be based on what we feel like is appropriate and best based on what the site looks and appears at this point.
Vice Chair Brand, I think that's very accurate.
Okay. Now that I've got that out of the way, can we get comments from the rest of the board? Yeah, go ahead.
So when I was reviewing this, I was thinking about hardship, but hardship is based on facts. And I was looking for drainage analysis, drainage plan, something that would show me, when you're showing that pond on there, how were those boundaries determined? I had absolutely nothing that was included with this application for what I had to review that would show me an engineering report, an engineering analysis, or just something that would outline that those were accurate boundaries of a consistently flooded area. And given that, I found it really hard to make a decision on this because, perhaps some of that area is flooded and some of it isn't, and that buildable area could be moved closer to the roadway. But there was nothing that I had that was a hard fact for me to base a judgment on. And the other thing that I just wanted to comment on is if a part of the problem that was created was done by the community, then what is the community's responsibility in this to correct what they did previous to your purchase of this property that changed the drainage? So if that was done, isn't it the HOA's responsibility to correct what was done, which is making it difficult for you to build on your property?
It wasn't done by the HOA. It was done by the previous owner of Lot 33. They were having a runoff problem from the rain that was going into their property and over their driveways and into backing up on the backside of the hill. That's why they put those cinder blocks, and that's 120 feet or more of cinder block.
But my question is, who is responsible for making these decisions within the community? Do you have?
I think the previous homeowner just did it by himself because there was such a problem, and he put the culverts in by himself because there was so much water coming over, it was washing away the bottom of his driveways and all his stuff on there and washing out the integrity underneath his driveway. So I think he took it upon himself back then just to build those culverts and do that. But the problem is, on the other side of the culverts, the land is as high as the culverts. So the culverts now just fill up and it doesn't drain off properly. This is the study for the 100-year flood.
Can we get a response from our attorney and staff regarding responsibility? Because
That's fine.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Vice Chair Brand and members of the Development Review Board, a drainage or ponding issue caused by an adjacent or contiguous parcel would be a private property matter. Stormwater in the city of Scottsdale could surely help with potential solutions, but really the cause and the solutions would need to be both implemented by the two private property owners.
Can I say something? Even at 10 feet lower on this lot, we're still going to be in that runoff area that's part of the 100-year flood stuff that the civil engineering firm came back with on their report to Mr. Clark. And I want to correct Mr. Clark on something. I didn't say your whole house wasn't approved. I said we were going into the city looking for the documentation of how you moved outside of your building envelope and what was granted there and how that was all done. There was nothing there.
I don't think I would agree. Hold on, and I think it's clear that yes, the building was permitted and built, and no, there is not a record of a DRB modified envelope that goes along with it. So
That's it, yeah.
our staff has even told us that somehow that process was not included, but yes, the building was fully permitted
Yes.
and built per city review standards. So, thank you. I'll let you finish your question, sorry.
No, and you know, again, it's getting back at information, factual information was not provided with this application, which showed, which would support how you determined, you know, the ponding area. Also, when you're looking at the environmentally sensitive areas, I was expecting to come back and seeing some sort of analysis of what impact you were having where you chose to put the building site. And there's nothing about vegetation, wildlife areas, rock outcroppings, boulders. I mean, it's, to me, if you're looking for approval, you should provide justification for why we should approve this area.
Respectfully, I'm a little confused because last time I stood here, the question was, we'd like stormwater to go down and tell us if that's a problem area or not that would justify moving the building envelope. So we got with stormwater, went down there, and they came back and said, yes, it's a problem area, and you have documentation on that. Had I known that you wanted more engineering and more stuff, I would have gladly gone out and got it.
I can provide more color to that comment as well, because it's the same thing that I was asking, is that based on the parameters of impact on land, it's not just an area of the property, it's also depth and cut and fill ratios. So again, when you're talking about clarity with an adjacent property owner and also about clarity with building height and impact on the community and impact on the land, understanding and seeing how much cut and fill and modification is needed to the site based on where your envelope is part of the investigation about if this is an appropriate building envelope. I will say that because I would remember the conversation very specifically, is that the previous application, there were many things that we had comments about, most of it that it was completely in conflict with the guidelines of the ESL district and how houses and envelopes are organized on this property. They aren't put on the highest point of the property. And then there were also questions about the actual clarification of the retaining area in the front of the property. But it doesn't mean that we just, the conclusion of that meeting was not if you can get some proof that staff says that there's water on the site, we'll approve the project. That's not what the conversation was.
It wasn't that clear that time. And that houses aren't built on hilltops. The house right across the street from me had a building envelope down here. He's sitting on the top of the hill. So, I mean.
Thanks for.
But, I mean, so what do we need now? You want engineering, cut and fill and all that stuff? Get back with Jeff and kind of go through that process?
I actually think the things that have been brought up on this project and brought up by the neighboring properties have to do with building impact and building height. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of things within this hillside or lower hillside district about understanding where the building height is in relation to the lower and higher grades. Mm-hmm. And so you're going to have issues because you're on a larger slope. You're going to have more retaining wall. It's actually going to be a little bit more difficult of a house to encounter drainage problems because you're building on more of a vertical, building on more topography change. Sure. And you're also going to face more challenging questions with regard to building height because you're you're going to have to significantly cut into the hill. And your building height is going to be based on your lowest, I believe it's going to be based on the lowest elevation within the footprint of the building. And so you're going to be challenged with a lot of things in this district. And I think that's what we'd go back to, is that these exhibits and some of the analysis that says, hey, we've looked at this, and I appreciate the architect coming up here, but when the architect came up here last time, he said it was conversational. It said, hey, this is the best, trust me, this is the least impactful area on the site. there is not a cut-fill analysis from a civil engineer that looks at this entire site. There's not a building envelope analysis of adjacent neighbors' heights. Do you know the height of the main building of your neighbor? Do you know their lowest topography that was disturbed? Are you presenting an argument in which the highest topography point that was disturbed is also matching the highest topography point on your property? These are the types of things that show conformance to adjacent developments, that show that you're meeting the same conditions. These are the types of things that have actually specific data points and have topography elements and have volumetric cut and fill that can say, we've done our due diligence, we are providing the same product. And so my problem again is with Ms. Robinson is that, you know, we're looking at this and we have no jurisdiction on what gets built on this property after the envelope is granted. This does not go through any sort of DR process at all. So there's no return back to this board in which you'd say, see, look, we're doing what we said we would do. We would, you know, once the envelope is given, then you're just up to the meeting the development standards of the zoning, and it goes straight through.
And we have to stay within those guidelines of all of that other stuff.
Right.
So how does height fall into that place then? Because once the envelope's given and we start to decide where we're going to put the house, we have certain guidelines of height restrictions we have to stay below, right?
Well, it depends on where the bottom point of your house is.
Right, but we have certain guidelines we have to, wherever, regardless, with that house that's placed in that building envelope, wherever we crack the ground first, we have certain height guidelines we have to stay on, period.
Okay, so what is the height of your house going to be?
Andy?
What is the height in a topography relationship of lot 35?
Good afternoon. Andy Gramling, an architect. To answer your question, this is not meant to be snarky, but we're kind of putting the cart before the horse. If we don't know what the building envelope's going to be, how could we possibly design a house around it? Historically, with working with staff, and I've had disagreements with staff before on other projects where they actually encourage us to cut into the hill more to lower the net height. The height limit is actually measured from existing natural grade. It's a rolling topography that matches the existing topography. So by cutting into it, we'll actually minimize the visual impact on the height of the finished product, because most of it will, underground is more of an overstatement, but, you know, kind of visualize a walkout basement on a lower floor. So, you know, and as far as the setbacks and the heights, until we have an approved building envelope, we can't possibly begin to design a house, right? We're just looking for a place to start. We have to meet, obviously, all the design review criteria. And as far as the drainage, I appreciate, DR Board Robinson, your question. I have a very empirical answer. When I first walked this property, no, there was no standing water. It felt like walking across a mattress. Now, this does not take a rocket scientist, but as the owner mentioned, it's loamy soil. It was based on working 40 years, 30 in Scottsdale in the ESL areas. The lower area and that area in blue is approximate, no question, but it is a legitimate area. We walked around that. It felt like, again, walking on a mattress. It was so inappropriate. Obviously, it's been super saturated with water over time. And I can guarantee you, working with the stormwater for a number of years in here and the engineering, we'd have to probably raise that area up 10 feet to get it to comply. And obviously, that's not, you were asking about cut and fill. And my experience with the city of Scottsdale, they're more concerned about fill than they are cut. We will definitely have a net cut in here, trying to minimize the impact of the property based on, having a larger portion of it kind of like a walkout basement style. So then the net result is actually going to be less impactful than putting a bunch of fill in there, which is probably a legitimate concern.
I'll respond to that because I had it's unfortunate that our probably the most knowledgeable civil engineer that resides in this city that's on this board is not on the board right now with Mr. Faki. I did have a conversation with him prior to this case this afternoon. He's overseas right now, which is unfortunate he couldn't be here. I would not disagree that the site in the loamy soil area would need mitigation. Absolutely. I'm sure based on the current conditions and the historical conditions of the site, I'm sure that it would need mitigation. That topic has not even been discussed or approached or presented to this board. You haven't said, You haven't come in with a section and said, this is the current envelope, this is what it would take. We would need to bring in X amount of volume of soil to come up with a solution that's appropriate per your standards. Therefore, I'm making this comment based on, this isn't how this case was presented. And it wasn't presented with information that said that, which is a little bit of part of the issue. You're right, you would probably have to remove some of the soil, compact it, and bring in you may need to bring in an excessive amount of fill, which may be against the cut fill regulations of the city. So, but sitting here and saying that it's not that you absolutely just can't build on the site, I think our staff has said it's possible that you may not be able to build on the site. The reality is it would take a ton of expense and a ton of mitigation to build on that existing envelope. Part of also what is confusing a little bit here too is that all of these conditions and the entire analysis of the site was known to you prior to purchasing the site. And none of this was brought up as a condition of a purchase or getting this approved as a condition. I mean, so this is all information in a known entity, and then you're coming and presenting a hardship, but these conditions have been in place for quite some time. And you're right, it has created a site which is very difficult to build based on probably the historical washing off the mountain. It may get flooded up. You may have cut out some of it, and you get ponding on that site. Now,
It's based off a preliminary plot, right?
Right.
And the NAOS plan.
Can you speak into the microphone?
It's based off a preliminary plot and the NAOS plan. There was no formal building envelope document that we could find when we did our due diligence on this. And if I remember, Jeff saying that's what they're going back to correct on the subdivision right now. So we did look at it there when we did that, and then I did have...
So there was no record of a building envelope?
It was...
Hold on, can Mr. Barnes clarify, please?
Vice
Is there
Chair
no record of a
Brand,
building envelope?
The building envelope is combined with the NAOS exhibit in the preliminary plat case, so there was not a separate building envelope exhibit, but it was the one that I had showed as part of my presentation for the original.
So you were aware of the building envelope then, correct?
Well, I was aware that this is the NAOS preliminary plot, yes. And I was also aware that 12 other people in the community have just, without moving, without having any hardship or an area to deal with like I have moved their building envelopes outside of their building envelope. 35 had no bad area down below. Their desert was perfect up to there. The guy across the street, his desert was perfect and he's on top of the hill, completely outside of his building envelope. There's 12 cases of the 26 custom homes in that community that have moved outside of their building envelope within the city of Scottsdale. So I guess a good starting point would be get into the city of Scottsdale, identify all those homes, and find out what regulations and what was asked for the movement of those building envelopes and what was provided for information in the decision process.
That's a good question. Can Mr. Barnes answer that question?
Vice Chair and board members, I don't know that I can provide a great additional answer to that. The apparent answer is that each of those other building envelope modifications, absent one down in the southeastern portion of the subdivision, had been reviewed through just the regular permit plan review process and had not come through an additional documented review like this one with a case through the DRB or a minor version through staff.
So, and now we...
Hold on just one second. Do we have anything else to add, Ms. Calabresi?
Yes, Vice Chair Brand, I just want to make two clarifications. We keep talking about hardship, and I think we're really veering into what is a criterion of a variance and not what is in the purview of the DRB. And I just wanted to clarify, I don't have the historical record any more than Mr. Barnes does in relation to the other buildings that have gone up, but one of your driving factors is to look at the design in compatibility with surrounding structures. So obviously, if there were no other surrounding structures when one home was built, each of these building envelopes are going to be a different analysis, obviously, as everything gets developed more in Scottsdale. So you're looking at everything not just in regards to, like I mentioned before, environmental conditions, site conditions, topography, conformity with the surrounding buildings, but also obviously desirability with nearby structures.
Thank you. Do we have any other, Mr. Peaser or Mr. Mason, do we have any other comments? I think sorry, I tend to be talking too much.
Yes, it's David Mason. I do have a couple of comments on this. I haven't looked at this and heard a lot of this stuff. It appears to me that when the original subdivision was laid out, the original, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, any of the staff, that the building envelopes were more of a suggestion than a firm building envelope. You know, some subdivisions would say, here is your official building envelope, and that's it, that's approved and everything. This one, it seems like they're more of a suggestions. And if people are going outside the building envelope whenever they feel like it, and I think we should look at that as a suggestion in the original plan and not a firm fixed thing, this is where your house must be, because the evidence and history has proven that whatever was originally laid out is not being followed by hardly anyone, or very few people are following it. Then I look at the area where they did put it, it appeared to me, just looking at the topo of it, not necessarily the water flow and anything like that, that the original site again looks like a suggestion. They put it there because it was convenient to the street rather than looking at where water flows might be. So I think if you look at that in consideration, you say, okay, well, I can understand it makes perfect sense to move it out of where it used to be further up the hill. And I think the staff analysis was presented earlier, at the beginning of this, I think shows that there's really not too much problem with this site. That I think that they've shown, good justification for moving it from where it used to be to where it is now, because where it used to be is not really firmly established as binding upon anyone. Those are my comments, unless the staff has any clarification or further clarification on it. Thank you.
May I make one comment? I think having Jeff Barnes out on the property and walking it was very influential in him approving where it was at and seeing what was going on. And he has been very conscious about how much digging or excavation we would need to do and where we would need to go. I mean, we walked that property for a long time. We were pretty sweaty afterwards. And we were looking at all of that, and we both felt that this would be the least impactful moving down the mountain for where it was, got us out of the problem area for where the lower level is on that, and had the ability to take advantage of some views and get in and build a beautiful home on the property.
Can I ask a question of Mr. Barnes? Is staff recommending approval of this?
Vice Chair, we are, I think I stopped short of that slide in my presentation, but we are recommending approval based on our analysis, the site walk, the understanding that one of our primary concerns the previous time was the impact to the top of the lot there, and that this aligns more consistent with what we can observe of the other developments surrounding it.
Okay, yeah, that was something important that was missed from your presentation, was that staff is actually recommending approval.
When I got in, I thanked them both for their signatures on that.
Do we have any comments, questions from Mr. Peaser?
Yeah, Jeff, this is probably more for you. A lot of the comments made here today about the surrounding properties and how houses have been moved outside of their building envelope. Now, and I know that can be done when it's done with the city's approval. I also know that every single family residential plan that comes into the city, the plot plan shows where that building envelope is, because the inspectors are out there verifying that the building is in fact being built within that envelope, and if it's not, they stop the construction. On a site like this, they can't physically go out there and measure it, so the policy of the city has been for decades that they have a Arizona registered land surveyor go out there and shoot the pins of the building and give us information back that says, yes, this building is located where it's supposed to be located. So it's odd to me that we would have so many surrounding properties built outside of the envelopes and not have historical records showing that those properties had requested to be built outside, because somewhere along the line, a surveyor was going to say to the building department, this building's not being built where it's supposed to be. It's outside the envelope. Can you bring some light to that, please?
Vice Chair Brand, Board Member Pieser, I think in response to that, I will start by acknowledging what Board Member Mason had said, which is the building envelopes in this instance are represented conceptually on the zoning graphics on through the preliminary plat. And I say that in the sense of they're not included with survey dimensions, pinned corners, all of those details that would give an exact location as you're describing. And so in the individual permit plan review process presented with a grading and drainage plan put together with the survey engineering team showing those more specific locations, it is entirely possible in all of these other lots that staff reviewed and acknowledged those movements as being in general conformance or consistent with the concept of the building envelopes. The contrast to that would be the initial request of this came in much outside of that placement and caused the further discussion that's led to this.
So what you're really saying is if I would have come in the regular way asking for this, we could have been stamping on our way instead of asking for the top of the hill.
Well, it's, you know, the building envelope is assigned to an area of the lot based on the required setbacks from the property line, so that you're not building anything over the envelope or too close to the property line setbacks. At least that's always been my definition of why we have a building envelope, so that you know that, I mean, I realize that most of the lots we deal with may not be the size of this lot, but even when you're dealing with a 10,000 acre lot or a 22,000 acre or square foot lot, you know, quarter of an acre, half an acre, or an acre, you still have to be able to determine that that building is being built where it's supposed to be, and it's not, because the setbacks from the property lines on those properties are much greater than they are on the smaller properties. So I just was curious as to, I guess what you're saying is for this subdivision, the building envelopes were kind of plopped down there as a suggestion, and that as long as you stayed within certain parameters, you could more or less move your building around to maybe a better location or a better setup?
Board Member Pieser, I would clarify by saying through our analysis, I don't think we saw that they were placed there without consideration because there are topographical factors and landforms and conserving hilltops and things that are all apparent in that record that seem to have pushed those envelopes to where they are. I think the point I was making is that in most instances of stipulated conformance to a development plan, like the building envelope plan for this, if there are not specific dimensions provided on there, then there are details expected to be refined in the individual lot development. And that is likely what happened for some of the other movements. I can't say for all of them because we don't have that record.
And you said that the maximum height of this structure can be 30 feet.
Measured from the natural grade, the rise and fall.
Okay. And I know that the architect really can't start the design of the structure until they know where the structure is going to be placed on the property. And if they were to place this structure where it's shown, or which I realize is not the exact location where you're going to put it, and they build to the maximum height of 30 feet, how does that affect the sight line of is it lot 33 next door that was a concern? I mean, do we know, I saw on a couple of the cards
Can we get clarification? The building height that's allowed here, is it the average of the natural grade across the footprint of the building, or is it measured from the lowest point of the building footprint?
Vice Chair,
Or is it based on adjacency to the natural grade?
Vice Chair Brand, it would be based on direct correlation to the natural grade as it moves up the hill in this instance. So there could be cut situations where the house is gaining height ability by sinking into the grade. There would be fill situations where it is losing height ability based on the necessary fill to level that out.
But the
it does
height of different portions of the house is based on its adjacency to natural grade.
Directly
30
below.
feet above its adjacent natural grade.
Well, I know on the comment cards that came in, there was a comment about, and I didn't quite understand it, about the height of a house being seen over the top of a mountain. I mean, if you've got houses out there that are already built, I'm not sure this house, where it's going to be located, would have that concern. But I know it was on one of the comment cards that somebody put in. But there's no sight lines out there as far as my house has to stay underneath the height of the mountain, right?
Board Member Pieser, not that we've got built into regulations the city would be imposing. I'll say that the association may have its own guidelines that say something different.
Well, I know on the original proposal, when they showed us the house on the north side, I guess, that's 35. Where the drainage culverts were put in. Apparently, originally,
That's 33.
is that 33? Okay.
35 is.
I can't see the board up there, so I'm not. But apparently, the original driveway went through this drainage easement and probably blocked the people's access, which is how this thing got built. But it was also pretty obvious, working with Public Works for as many years as I have, that the two little culverts they put in there weren't going to handle the loading of any water running down off the hill, the alluvial fan that'll come down off that hill and build up. And the question earlier was if anything was going to be, if the installation of this that's caused so many problems on this property was ever going to be addressed. It was obviously done without permits or inspections.
That's not true.
And maybe I should ask the homeowner if you've ever considered going to the neighbor and saying, I don't care if this is here, but if it's done the right way, this won't be such a problem if a box culvert was installed.
Well, it would just need to be dug out and cleaned out on the backside because his property on the backside of the culvert is as high as his driveway. So if he...
And that was the way it was originally?
Well, that's how it is now. I don't know how it was originally. I mean, it's been there for years.
So where do those culverts go to?
They just go to the other side of his driveway and fill into a little thing like this. And it's probably, let me take it back, it's probably a foot lower, so it spills over the top and runs down into the main wash.
Okay.
If I go back to, where's Vivian's thing?
Well, I saw the picture.
There's the stormwater here. These are his culverts.
Yeah, so you have to talk in the mic. You can use the mouse will show up on that.
These are his culverts right in here, down below. And as you can see, his property is higher over here before it goes into the wash. So it just spills over the top of that and leaks out, and then the rest of it absorbs in. And when you look at the fence line, that fence line starts about here and comes all the way down to here, taking all of this water from this side of the hill and pushing it over to me. Because he's really got no other place to go unless we do something down here, because it would just run right into his backyard up to his fence and flood all this. And I think that's the problem 33 was having previous years ago, and why he built that makeshift, why he did this.
Yeah, that's not exactly a structure though, is it?
No, it's not. But I mean, and you can see how high those culverts are below, or how low those culverts are below his driveway. So yes, I mean, if we come back to where we're talking about here, I don't want to have mosquitoes and ponds and stuff down here. But what we would do is we'd probably get a hold of him and say,
Hold on,
We
this
dig
is,
out the backside.
yeah, I want to make sure we're keeping all this within the purview and the discussion that DRB should be having. We're getting, I appreciate the commentary. This is all in
Okay.
discussion about the project, but we are way off of the subject matter that we should be considering here.
So these are subject, I mean, the plots that we're dealing with initially
So-
are somewhat subject. Where do we go from here?
Does legal have advice for us?
I mean, we have staff approval,
No, you have staff's recommendation.
recommendations.
You
Okay.
have to get approval from this board. You have
That's what I
staff
thought.
recommendation. I will say personally from this case, I think what we are missing is, I think that this is an improvement on the envelope, but what we are missing is a little bit of data that would help us make a judgment call on this case. And the data would be supportive data of substantial conformance to adjacent neighbor standards. I think that
Explain that in a little more detail for me.
that you're conforming to the same standards that your adjacent property owners have
That
been
came out of their
conforming.
building envelope and built up against my property and all of that?
Yes, I'm talking about impact to the land and building height. I think what's been discussed here, a lot of it is building. It's also incredibly disrespectful, I feel like, for you to sit up here and laugh when we're
No,
asking you questions.
I'm just frustrated because
And I know you're frustrated, but as a board here, we're also taking time out of our
get it.
day
I
to sit
appreciate
here
that.
and listen to you, and you're responding to questions that we ask of you by laughing.
No, that wasn't a laugh. It was just like a gasp, like, okay, I'm a little frustrated. I apologize. I didn't mean it disrespectful.
I'll open this up for a motion.
Vice Chair Brand, if I may interrupt just for a moment, I apologize. I was combing through, I had been talking about a 30-feet building height. There is a zoning stipulation that talks about different portions of the development being 24 feet in height instead of 30. I don't have the specific answer for you, but I did want to provide at least a clarifying this lot could fall into that description. I don't think we initially assessed it as being part of that, but if it factors in to your consideration, the difference between 24 and 30 feet, I wanted to make sure you're aware that is a zoning stipulation that specifies certain lots in certain portions of the subdivision be limited to that.
Do you have a, go ahead.
Thank you. I wanted to ask a legal question. This board is not an arbitrator to having neighbors go against each other or anything like that. Am I correct in that assumption?
Vice Chair Brand and Commissioner Gonzalez, yes, you are correct in that assumption.
Okay, I wanted to basically say one more thing about this is that although you may have legitimate problems on this, we as a board do not oversee these problems. These problems are something that you can arbitrate in another way, in another setting. Mr. Barnes, in this subdivision, do you know what year the subdivision was done?
Commissioner Gonzalez, the preliminary plat case went through in 1995.
Okay, so 1995. So anything that's happened after that point in time, we can't excuse what's happened, and we really can't arbitrate what's happened with the neighbors. So this may not be the mechanism to discuss this, and that's where I'm going to leave it.
I have a question, if I may, for Mr. Barnes and the rest of the staff, is that if you have basically said, Mr. Barnes, that there's no, you would tentatively, we would recommend that this board approve that, then I would tend to agree with that recommendation, because I think what we've started on is going down the rabbit hole and saying, well, you know, we were trying to apply just the standards that should have been applied back when all the other things were happening today. You know, this is not 1995, it's 2025, and a lot has happened. And I don't think we should say, that today in 2025, we should be applying today's standards and say, well, the person should have done that, or should have done this, or should have done the other. Now, what I think you're saying, Mr. Barnes, is that based upon what you've seen, that the new proposed lot location satisfies everything that really needs to be considered and does allow us to go ahead and say we can approve this as it stands without violating anything. Is that your assessment?
Vice Chair Brandon, Board Member Mason, this is your Assistant City Attorney, Angela Calabresi. I think that's an important point because analyzing anything that was done prior to today would not only require to pull factual evidence in the record as to why hypothetically these building envelopes may or may not have been altered, but looking at the legal framework under which they were allowed to do so. I think I mostly just want to encourage you to stick to the purview of the DRB. By way of example, there are many applications that come before this board, and you consider all of the things that you know, and you take all of your personal and professional experience, which you all are very renowned for, and apply it to this and look at how the evidence in the record from both staff and the applicant, how it applies here, looking at environmental conditions, topographical, how the new building envelope would relate to another building envelope, and really stay away from the hardship considerations.
Well, that's exactly what I'm saying. I don't think this is a hardship case at all. I think Mr. Brand has taken a look at it and studied it based upon the criteria that this board should be looking at, and said based upon what he's seen is to say, yes, it is approved. And it's not a hardship because, you know, from what I hear and what I've seen, and I think Mr. Brandt may or may not agree with me, is that the original building envelope, as we've heard, was not formalized in any manner, so it could be even inspected to see, yeah, everything is built according to the envelope. It was just, you know, somebody put a thumbprint on a map and said, here it is. And maybe they added some thought into putting their thumbprint on it, but I think Mr. Brand has worked together with the current builder to say, yes, I think the new proposed envelope satisfies what this board is supposed to look at. Is that your assessment?
I think that's a question for you.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't clarify who I was asking. But yes, that's right.
Board Member Mason, as much as I was following along with what you were saying, I wonder if I could ask you the specific question you were asking so that I can make sure I'm answering it properly.
Specific question is, in your assessment and looking at your recommendation that the board approve this new location, that as far as you're concerned, there's no reason why we shouldn't approve that from even what you've heard today. There's no real reason why you would change that assessment, is there?
Board Member Mason, I don't know that anything has come up in discussion today that would change staff's position on this. Our review of the details in what was provided, what we were able to uncover from the history and the records, and looking at the topographical conditions and such, the position of recommending support on this would still be the same.
I'm gonna make.
Thank you.
Thanks. I'm gonna make a comment to just kind of wrap up what my thoughts are on this. To me, I think the portion of the envelope that has maybe the most concern are the upper tiers of topography that are contained on the southern portion of the envelope. What I'm trying to understand is that when you build up to that southern tip, it doesn't feel like the envelope is really following a topographical shape, as in you're trying not to disturb an area above a certain height. And so you've got, it looks like 3 different topographical jumps on the southern side of this that may allow your building footprint to press all the way up against that topography and build at a substantially higher height than your neighboring property. I would be willing to approve this case if there was data that showed that the topography that you are building up against, based on the height standards of this area and the development standards, would mean that you are producing a house with the height parameters that are similar or the same to the neighboring property, your directly neighboring property. And for me, that's a method of actually taking data, looking at the topography, looking at the development ordinance, and setting actually some maximum height parameters that are actually in alignment with neighboring properties. Does that make sense?
I want to understand what you're saying. So what you want me to do is make sure I don't build any of my house higher than where they're at?
I think the guidelines that we're looking for, if we're not judging this based on the historical location, we have to look at that this district and our guidelines also have a lot to do with context. And so we are making a judgment based on the appropriate context, and the context of your lot and what you're asking for is your adjacent lots. And so, yes, that's why I'm asking that we would want to make sure that we are not approving something, and from staff's opinion, approving something in which you could build something that feels out of context. This board would be failing if we gave a determination on a case and there was a building that was built on that lot that looked and felt out of context with the neighborhood.
So I'm not going 3 stories high and end up being at 50 feet, is what you're saying?
Like if, per se, you built a sky deck 30 feet up from the highest point of topography on your site.
I get that.
That is what I'm talking about. So if there are stipulations, I would actually be willing to make a motion right now for approval with stipulations that staff manage that based on a data of understanding the topography that was the measuring height of the adjacent property and the highest roof points of the adjacent property as well. Is that something that you would be amenable to?
Is that doable?
Yeah, Vice Chair Brand, yeah, no, I think that's easily, what we have shown here is showing the maximum of a 20,000 square foot building envelope. There's no intent. What's shown here is to use the full envelope. Mr. Angelini does not want a 20,000 square foot house. He's made that very clear. We're going to be underbuilding this. This is just meant to show conformance with the NAOS requirements. And it's not, I apologize, because if you obviously look at the contours, I'm going to count them, 10, 20. We've got close to 30 feet of cross slope on what is shown as just the house footprint. It won't end up like that. We'd end up with 25-foot retaining walls or something like that. So this is mainly meant to show the possible area that might be able to be used. And we don't want a 3 or 4 story house. Nobody does. It would be unsellable as an investment. So yeah, I'd be certainly okay with saying, hey, we're not going to use that uppermost peak we've got shown here because, again, it's just shown as an example of compliance with the stated rules and the ones that are, undefinable. We can't have more than 20,000 square foot building envelope. Jeff has aptly explained the height limit. We have the setbacks, the maximum NAOS widths, all those things, no issue with. Those are indisputable. And so, yeah, we don't want to be crossing 30 feet of contour with the design anyway, because that would just, it would be.
I would love to trust you on your best intention, but there's absolutely zero authority for anyone to stop you from doing something that we wouldn't want you to do. So that's why we have to.
Part of the thing we're looking at back here is a private yard because the hill's actually higher here, and this would be down lower, and we can have our own little private area in the summit area as a yard. So this isn't looking to be house. This is looking to be a private yard off a master probably.
Right, but this approval is not of a building floor plan or uses. It's really just of the envelope outline.
Exactly.
And even though you're saying, well, we want to build a garden here, you would be fully permitted to build your building right up against that envelope line and have it be 30 feet from natural grade. So we have to have mechanisms that protect against, because there is zero process from this approval that comes before a board based on design, zero. So that's why we're looking at this.
I have a question. If we would have gone in what was supposed to be the original building envelope, would we be having this conversation about a height of a house?
The original building envelope down on the base of the,
Yeah.
No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't, because the original building envelope was built at a elevation that was similar to most of the other envelopes consistent around the neighborhood. So what you're asking is
Okay. So
What you're
you want us
asking
to
is a
conform
shift.
to the hill but not be too high, is what you're saying?
Yes, I think we want a parameter to make sure that what you're building is in contextual relation to the rest of the neighborhood. And we have to have a method of doing that. Sure.
Vice Chair Brand, Andy Graham again. Actually, there is a mechanism. I remember we're working with both Brad and Jeff on a similar project in Ancala where we were in full conformance with all the guidelines. We actually ended up stepping and lowering a house down because they felt it was too high on the lot. So there is a staff, and rather than fight them, we just say, you know what, it's not a bad idea, we can just do it. And so there was a mechanism in place for an unrelated project where the staff and I just basically looked at it and said, you know what, this is a better solution, and we conformed with that. So there was a staff approval that we required, and we actually had to do a modification on an unrelated project where we were in conformance with the rules, but staff felt that it was just not with the intent of the guidelines, and we met them.
I don't really think a case in another neighborhood is relevant, but I don't think it's under the purview of staff to make judgment calls on a parent relationship. I would just rather have something that's very specific within this approval that goes along with your case, and you don't need that sort of staff subjectivity. Yes.
Vice Chair Brand, may I make a suggestion based upon what you're saying for language for you?
Would love that.
Okay. You could potentially stipulate that given the maximum height requirement of the vested zoning of Lot 34, the building envelope shall not extend into any area of the current topography which elevation combined with the maximum building height does not exceed the height of the structures of Lot 33 or 35.
We're already above 33 anywhere we're at.
I don't believe that.
Or some.
Yeah, I think maybe just 35, because 33 is, I would recognize, is built at a much lower elevation. So I don't think that's a good barometer for this.
Respectfully, to be at 35's level, I'd have to go in the ground 10 feet there or more. They're below us. Our street level, from where we're talking about here, when we were talking about this, from foundation on our main level, was within 3 feet of 35.
So what you're saying is you would not be amenable to that stipulation?
I'm saying I'm going to listen to that, look at that stipulation and see how it's going to impact what I might want to do on that lot.
I have a question.
Because
Sure.
if we have that stipulation, I couldn't put a second story on that. And to do the amount of square footage I want on the bottom, it would take a lot of the building envelope up and not be able to have a yard. I mean, I'm around the side of a mountain from 35. I only see his, as he put it, his dog walking area. I don't even see his house over there for where it's at. I can see his roof line down there, and by where that's at on the hill, we're going to be higher if we do a second story than his roof line by about 3 feet.
I understand, but the purview of this board isn't to make sure that you have a perfect house. The purview of the board is to make a decision about the building envelope that's
Right.
in the guideline. And you're talking about things that are about your preference about how you want to build the building.
About height variance is what you're giving us to deal with here. If we're talking about building envelopes, now we're talking about the height of my house and where I design my house.
I'm open to any motions from the board.
What I had a question about is that I'm picturing what you're talking about. Is it possible to do a diagram that shows volumes in relationship to the topography as well as the house on Lot 35?
And we'd want that volumetric study to be written into record as
Yes.
a regulating study, correct?
Absolutely.
Respectfully, board members, this is an entirely different lot with different constraints. I understand your concerns, I really do get them. Would it be acceptable to say, pick a line here on the board, say that contour and stipulate anything beyond that is space and not house, or something like that? We're just looking to honestly get to the point where we can start designing a house, because what you're asking for, again, kind of cart before the horse. If we don't know where you're asking us to design a house and then decide whether it's acceptable for a building envelope. That's not the way we usually do things.
Can I come in with a suggestion?
Well, this isn't
here?
a normal
We keep
lot.
I have one point on elevation. We keep talking about elevation, and we can look at the houses on the adjacent lots and say, they have a certain rooftop elevation, it's net elevation above sea level. And so if we say to this particular lot right here that the height of your roof cannot be higher than the highest elevation above sea level of either 33 or 35, either one of those. So that way, that would constrain them, because I think we're trying to figure something out that doesn't seem to be figurable, because one lot is lower than the other, one lot is higher than the other, and we're trying to say, I'm not exactly sure how we can structure this and put the limitations on it. There are current limitations say that within the guidelines that say, building guidelines, they can only go up to so high, and those appear to work fairly well. I'm share the board's frustration figuring out exactly how we can do this, but that's my point.
Mr. Mason, that's what I was proposing with the last discussion with staff, was actually taking the height of the roof, the existing height of the roofs on adjacent lots, and setting that as a barometer for the heights on this property. I don't know if that's permissible or not.
Vice Chair Brand, I would caution against taking that approach, because the DRB does not have purview and authority to really review and approve the design of a house. However, you do have the authority to approve the building envelope, which is where the house sits. And given a 30-foot maximum, you can move it basically downhill, so to speak, so that the same effect is achieved.
We don't have the ability to dictate development standards. Is that correct? We don't have the ability to change or dictate some development standard. All we have the ability to do is approve or deny the building envelope. And then the development standards are what they are.
Correct. In this case, yes, Vice Chair Brand. I just want to make a clarification, though. I think you can achieve the same end as to what you and Mr. Mason are trying to do. You just have to do it in a specific way.
Okay, which is why I was asking to do the math, essentially the backward math of comparative house elevation heights, so that you can work backwards and you would have the ability, based on the topography, to do the building that you want to do on the site. I'm not asking you to design the entire building. It's not what we're asking. We're asking you to do a study of the topographies that the edge of the building would want to be on and where you'd want to be. Look at the development standards for the height regulations in the area, and then have a comparison of, like, we are relatively in line with what this neighbor is doing and what the context of my lot is. That allows us.
I understand. I understand that, but now, so I've got to move to a lower position so I can be lower with them, or I've got to cut my house down so I can be. Where in the guidelines does it say my house can't be any taller than their house?
Well, the guidelines say you need to be in the building envelope area that's outlined here.
Right, but where does it say my house can't be any? Where does it say that my house has to be the same height as his house in the guidelines? The neighborhood has multiple hills and houses in all kinds of different directions. My house, the house across the street.
Because let me stop you there. Because our ability to regulate the change in your building envelope on this board is based on context. And the context that you have in your entire argument for needing a shift in the building location is based on historical building, specifically the neighbor next door. And so if we are to make some sort of judgment on your building envelope, we have to do it based on context. That's what we're saying. It's not based on a guideline, you have to be exactly the same height, but we need to see something aside from just a plan diagram that shows that the relative context of the parcel adjacent to you that you are operating within. This is, again, a plan. This is not an elevation height. I think this is part of what's difficult here is that we don't have a section and a building height of the topography of this site and the adjacency of this building. I have no idea how tall that building is on Lot 35. It could be a 15-foot, one-story building spread all the way across, and it actually doesn't poke up at all over the natural landscape. I have no idea. And there's frankly been no information that's been presented to us for us to understand the context. But I'm just saying that our ability to shift the building envelope has 100% to do with this, with the shift of the building envelope fitting into the context of where you're building at. That's our entire authority is based on context.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to move to not approve case 12 PP 1995 number 2, including the amended building envelope for Lot 34.
Is there a second on that?
I second.
Vice Chair Brand,
No.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes.
Board Member Pieser,
No.
Board Member Mason,
No.
Board Member Robinson. Motion fails. Thank you.
I think there's a way that we can get here. I'm going to move to continue this. So I'm going to make a motion to continue just for our board to know. I think that there has been good progress on this, and I think for this board to be able to make a decision that's favorable to you, I don't want to reject this because I respect the process that you've gone through. I think for us to make a decision, we have to have information about the context and the impact of where you're proposing this based on the relevant information of adjacent. You have to prove that the context fits in with your surroundings, which is your next door neighbor, which is part of what you're talking about. So I can let staff guide you on that, but I think that this is very, very close. But in order for us to have the right information to make an approval on this, I think we would need to see that information so that it can be specific. For me, it has a lot to do with the limited purview of this board, and that we do not have any sort of authority to review this project after an envelope is approved. With that, I'm going to make a motion to move to continue this case to a date non-determined yet, to allow for the applicant to have a couple of exhibits of relative context with building height and vertical cut-fill disturbance.
I second the motion.
Second.
I'd like to add the stipulation that they work with staff to develop this so that when it comes back before the board, we can have almost all the questions resolved.
Yes, sorry, I thought that was intimated. I'll add that we would, in working with staff, to produce that context. I think we have a second.
Second the motion.
Vice Chair Brand,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes.
Board Member Pieser,
Yes.
Board Member Mason,
Yes.
Board Member Robinson.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
All right, agenda item number 7, 61-DR 2015, number 7. Can we get a staff report for that?
Vice Chair Brand, Commissioner Gonzalez, and board members, thank you guys for joining again. This is 1 Scottsdale Planning Unit number 3, Torch Club. the Nogan Villa as well, also known for. This case actually came in front of the board just a couple weeks ago and was continued to work with staff and to get with the board members on some updated materials for the building elevations. Again, just some context for the site. It is located in the northeast corner of Scottsdale and 101, just north of Legacy and south of Townsend Peak Parkway. Again, some of the big points that were changed just from that continuance from the board members were updated materials. We wanted some more definitions on the joineries for the bricks. There was some questions and concerns about the gates in front and the walls surrounding the property and the updates that they've made to that. They've added some brick features to that, increased the joints between all of the bricks proposed. And so with that, I'm going to kind of close off staff's presentation. We're happy to answer any questions. We did meet with Vice Chair Brand in the past 2 or 3 weeks to kind of go over some of these things. The applicant team is here and can go over any of these updates that you guys have, but again, that's staff's presentation. I'm happy to clarify any questions you guys have. Thank you.
Thank you. I can lead this off a little bit because I have had a follow-up discussion with the applicant. We talked about a few things for information of the board. They can come up here and present. I know the applicant is here, but we specifically talked about the actual material and the construction and the finish type and how the composition of the building cladding is being proposed and the exact product that's being proposed here. To summarize, I was happy with the product that was being proposed in lieu of some of the faux brick patterns on the EAFS product, which I think have been removed from the project. And there has been an addition of GFRC and natural stone to the central entry piece of the project. So this was a discussion that I had with the applicant that we thought would be an enhanced level of delivery of the project, specifically at the entry point, which I was happy with. I believe that we also discussed either natural stone or some sort of exposed masonry product for the perimeter wall. Is that the case? Can we get the applicant to come up and answer a couple questions? I'm forgetting what was discussed on the perimeter screen wall on the project.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Brand, members of the DRB. I'm Tom Galvin with Rose Law Group, 71144 East Stetson Drive. I was not here at the last meeting that was held on June 10th, but I did observe the hearings, and I understand this considerable discussion that was had. And I just want to point out that the architect is here to answer any technical questions. But Vice Chair Brand, you did a really good job of laying out what were the issues last month and how they've been resolved and addressed to you directly. And also want to appreciate staff. I just want to make a couple of points here because the applicant has modified the design after incorporating feedback from DRB members over the last month by including the incremental 12 by 12 columns that have variations in height to break up the monolithic look of the wall around the perimeter, and also adjustments have been made in such a short period of time, and as you explained and outlined, roof pitches have been adjusted to be more cohesive, and that's for consolidation for clarity as suggested. Material palette board is now updated, and as you pointed out last month, you wanted it to reflect authenticity. Elevations are updated with the proper GFRC elements, and stone materials are now on the perimeter wall. The character and design elements of the general Air Park character area plan and the DRB criteria have been met, which I want to emphasize. And once again, this is a luxury project fitting for Scottsdale, fitting for North Scottsdale. It includes contemporary elements with traditional influence, and this project reflects the excellence of what you see here today, and it respects Scottsdale's high standards and reputation. But to go back to the original question of what happened last month, I think we've addressed all of those concerns. Obviously happy to discuss landscaping if you want to address that as well. And if you have any technical questions for the architect, he can provide you brief and concise answers.
I did have 2 questions for the architect. The surrounding perimeter wall, it looks like you've got a stone accent, which is I'm trying to remember the name of the product. It's a faux stone.
It's a Colorado stone, yes.
Okay.
Oh, it's Naveen Pathinger Architects. 727 East Bethany Home Road.
And
Phoenix,
the stone that's being used on the perimeter wall is, what is that, the columns?
Yes, it's on the columns. It's Coronado stone, yes.
Oh, so that's Coronado stone. And the infill between those, what's the product being used between there?
It's CMU wall with stucco on top with a cap of GFRC, the stone on top of the wall.
Okay, so the cap is GFRC. It's a smooth stucco finish on a CMU
Yes.
wall. Okay. I had a couple of questions. The primary trees that are being used around the perimeter of the project, are those 24 or 36-inch box trees?
What we have based on the DRB is all 24-inch, but I believe that we can increase that size if needed.
Okay. That's going to be part of the stipulation. I had a few requests directly from people living in the surrounding area. I have no other comments. Do we have any comments from the board?
What is the glazing on the material?
The glazing?
Yes.
Yeah, it's all Solar Band 50.
Is there going to be any reflective material on the glazing or anything that will bounce that light forward?
No.
Okay. And then I guess, what was the material, I'm sorry, on the roofing again?
It's metal.
It's a metal roofing? Okay.
Yes.
It's bifurcated, yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Do we have any other questions from the board? Mr. Mason?
I have none. I'm pleased with what I saw on the site. That's why I have no questions. Looks good to me.
Mr. Pieser and Ms. Robinson? No. With that, I'm going to make a motion to approve case 61, DR 2015, number 7, per the staff recommended stipulations, with the additional stipulation of upgrading 24-inch box trees to 36-inch box trees after finding that the development application meets the Development Review Board criteria.
Second.
Vice Chair Brand,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes.
Board Member Pieser,
Yes.
Board Member Mason,
Yes.
Board Member Robinson.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Board.
Do I have a motion to adjourn, please?
I'll move to adjourn.
Yes.
Thanks.